when I first looked over the readings for this week, and I saw that first reading from Jeremiah, the one where at the end the Lord says to Jeremiah not to worry, that his enemies would not overcome him and that the Lord would rescue him. Two things came to mind. Number one, if the Lord ever says those words to you, then right away you know, A, that in fact your enemies will not overcome you, and B, there will be times where it's going to look like that your enemies will overcome you, and the only way you know that's not going to happen is to trust in the Lord. And that's what happens with Jeremiah. Jeremiah is one of the great prophets that we see in the Old Testament. And in Jeremiah, if you remember my homily from last week, I gave you a little bit of a history lesson. And I talked about a time where Israel had turned away from the Lord, the northern kingdom, and the Assyrians came, wiped it off the map, never to exist again until 1948. Well, in today's first reading, we're looking at the next part of my history lesson from last week, where we talked about Judah and how Judah started to turn from the Lord. And so Jeremiah is preaching to the prophet, Jeremiah is the prophet to the nation of Judah. Now the people in Judah had turned from the Lord, and they committed the greatest of all sins with the Lord, which is idolatry. Today we may not have an understanding of how serious idolatry was, so let's take a look at it. They would often worship the god Baal, which was a pagan god. And the reason why was because Baal was the god of fertility. Now, in an urban culture like we have today, you might say, well, fertility means lots of children. Yes, that's true. But also in an agrarian culture, fertility means lots of crops, bountiful harvest, lots of livestock, and therefore fertility means prosperity. And there you go with the people who are worshiping Baal, because they're not just looking for a good crop, they're looking for prosperity. And this prosperity seduces them, and therefore they seek all that the world has to give to them, not really concerned about their relationship with God. This provides a disaster in the making. Now, in reality, we have something similar that happens here. And you might say, well, what kind of thing happens here? Besides the fact there are those who are focused on prosperity specifically in this world, not what the Lord can give, and they will do whatever they can to get it. But there's also another issue that was very similar to what they would do in the time of Judah. Have you ever met anyone who takes a statue of St. Joseph and buries him underground so that they can sell their house? That's not too much different than what the people who Jeremiah was preaching against were actually doing. Now, one of the things we need to look at when we see that is that Jeremiah is trying to lead people back to the Lord. And of course, they're not going to listen because they want their prosperity. But he's reminding them that the true prosperity comes from the Lord, and the path that they are walking down is going to lead them into gross injustice in their country. And the only way to prevent that from happening is for their country to be severely punished by the Lord so that they may change their ways. Obviously, the people are choosing prosperity. And so Jeremiah becomes one of the three major prophets in the Old Testament who ends up wishing that he was dead. As a matter of fact, the other two, Moses and Elijah, actually said to the Lord, "Kill me now." But Jeremiah said, "I wish I was never born." He was out preaching the word to the people, and the people did not want to hear it. And his suffering became so severe that I call him literally, I'm not being funny here, the patron saint of Tourette syndrome, because he would try to hold in his prophecy so he wouldn't have to speak it. Now, if you've ever met anyone with Tourette syndrome, they will tell you that the manifestations they have, which are often more commonly known, although this isn't the case of everyone with Tourette's, of people who say the most inappropriate words for that time, they just come out. Well, they will tell you they try to hold the words in, and they'll come out anyway, even stronger after a few minutes. That's what Jeremiah suffered. He tried to hold the prophecy in, and it still would come out. And the people would obviously insult him, they'd mock him, but they even tried to kill him. They even threw him down a well. And as I said, it became so severe, he turned around and said, "I wish I was never born." Well, when we look at that story, then we can also look at the bigger picture, because everything that Jeremiah said was right. Eventually, the people didn't listen, and the kingdom of Babylon came in and completely wiped out Judah. It took all the movers and shakers, the people who benefited from prosperity, the people benefited from financial and prosperity and power, and tortured some of them and took them all into Babylon. What was left were the people that the Babylonians did not want. And those people never saw the promised land, the land of Judah, again for the rest of their lives. It was only the next generation that finally returned. And so we see that Jeremiah was speaking the truth when he warned the people that the path of prosperity they were looking for was not going to lead them to everything they thought it would. Now a question I have for you is, Jeremiah was a prophet. Who are you? Because here we are in the Catholic Church, and we all know how much people really work against the Catholic Church. We see it in Hollywood, where people are always mocking the Catholic Church. We see it, in various venues in the media. And we know that a lot of people hate the Catholic Church. Why? Because the Catholic Church stands up for people to seek Christ, but also to recognize that everything that they really want to find that'll lead them to the fullness of humanity, they're not going to find in the world. And when we preach that message, people get very angry. Right now, you will hear from many venues that the Catholic Church stands in between the research community in the United States and probably other countries and billions of dollars in research grant money because of our stand on embryonic stem cell research and cloning. Because we warn people, if you walk down that path, you think you are going to find great prosperity. You won't. And that's what people don't understand, and so they don't choose to listen to us, and they get angry at us, and they attack us. And that's what happens because we have chosen and are chosen by the Lord to speak the message. And if you remember carefully, the warning that the Lord gave to Jeremiah is not much different that he gave to us. The gates of hell will not prevail against you. So when we look at that, we have to ask ourselves the question, especially as we are drawing closer to Lent, which path do we choose to walk down? Are we going to choose to say yes to the Lord, taking the risk that we are going to suffer greatly, as did Jeremiah, but knowing that we have to preach the message, because if we don't, the people will be lost? Or do we choose to join the people and join in their seeking for prosperity, their seeking for all that they are looking for from this world? That choice is ours. We know that the more difficult choice is to live the Catholic faith and to live it more strongly, which we're all called to do, to live that spirit of conversion and to grow closer to Christ. However, we have the choice. Which do you choose to walk down? Which path? And you know, one of them has the greatest of all fruits, but the more difficult path. And the other one has the lesser fruits, but the much easier path. But the fruit of the easier path does not ultimately lead to the life to which we are called. And so I ask you that question. We know that Jeremiah was a prophet. Who are you? Which path are you walking down? And are you going to embrace the path that leads you to be able to lead others to know the truth of Christ? Or are you going to join them? Jeremiah was a prophet. Who are you? God bless you.